Hey everyone, welcome back to Firsthand Globetrotting. I'm back with part 5 of my trip to the Outer Banks, North Carolina. So far, this trip has been perfect. I've had a beautiful ocean, miles of sandy beaches, almost no crowds, and seafood around every corner. It's been an amazingly relaxed time. In case you missed my other videos about this trip, in part 1 I showed you around where I was staying and got my first chance to explore the incredible beaches that seem to go on forever in every direction. In part 2, I gave in and went to one of the mini golf courses that they seem to have every few miles in the Outer Banks, and I went to one of the most unique state parks that I've ever been to. Part 3 was all about the wild horses, and I took a beach safari to some isolated parts of the Outer Banks that you can only get to by driving through the sand. In part 4, I got an unexpected surprise from a crab, saw some wild dolphins, and found time for another round of mini golf. If you missed any of those other parts, I'll put links to them down below in the description. Today is my 6th and final day in the Outer Banks. Unfortunately, I only have a few more hours left before it's time to hop back into the car, drive home, and return to real life. I started my trip to Nag's Head on the beach, and I'm going to do my best to stay out here on the beach until the very last minute before I go. Honestly, I kind of wish that I had booked an extra week here. That's usually the sign of a good vacation spot, when even after you've seen and done nearly everything you wanted to, you still wish you could stay longer. But eventually I had to drag myself away from the beach and head back to the highway for the drive back home. The Outer Banks have so many tourist shops, and I haven't been to any of them yet, so I figured I may as well check one out before I leave. If you didn't know you were in the Outer Banks, you'll definitely know as soon as you walk in. Pretty much every beach souvenir you can possibly think of is here, and they all proudly say Outer Banks on them. I didn't end up buying anything, but I had to check it out. Before I left the Outer Banks, I had one last stop on my way out of town. I haven't really done many cultural or historic things since I've been here, so I figured I should check out the Wright Brothers National Memorial in Kill Devil Hill. I can't even count how many flights I've taken over the years, so it was pretty interesting to see the place where it all started. Most of it is a pretty big open field with some info posted about the brothers, and they have some little markers sticking out of the ground so you can see where they were able to get to in some of their early test flights in the gliders. But what I noticed was a big monument on a hill. The hill itself isn't any bigger than the sand dunes, but it's Kill Devil Hill. That's where the town gets its name from. It's a bit of a walk up to the hill from the parking lot, but I thought it was worth it. And if anyone deserves a big monument in their honor, it's Wilbur and Orville. The impact that their designs and test flights and hard work and dedication have had on the world is nearly impossible to measure, but it's impacted so much of our lives. Think how much harder it would be to travel if it wasn't for these two guys and what they did. So I definitely have to thank them for how easy they've made it for me to travel and explore the world. And even though the hill isn't very high, you have to remember that this is the Outer Banks where nothing is very tall, so you can still get a nice view from up here out over the houses in Kill Devil Hill all the way to the ocean. I got lucky, and there were even some old-timey airplanes flying over the Wright Brothers Memorial while I was walking around. Once I got back in the car, it wasn't very long before I was driving over the big bridge that connects the Outer Banks back to mainland North Carolina. As I said earlier, I really wish that I could make a U-turn and head back to Nag's Head for some more time at the beach. This trip was a long time coming, and I had really built it up in my head, so my expectations were sky high before I left. I think I've said this in pretty much every video about my trip, but it ended up being everything I wanted and more. I'm really glad I stayed beachfront while I was here. It was the perfect spot. The beach and the ocean couldn't have been any better. The sand was so nice and clean, there really weren't too many people there, and the beach was pretty much never ending. and I just loved the small town feeling where nothing was very crowded, the buildings weren't very big, and nearly every restaurant was a small local place. And the fact that the Outer Banks isn't just a single place, but over 100 miles of beachfront towns and nature, where you can see wild horses and wild dolphins and even drive along a beach road if you want to. I didn't regret my trip at all, and I'd love to come back here again. I said it in one of my other videos, but I had heard so many good things about the Outer Banks over the years, and so many people love it, I just wish I had come here sooner. So that's it for my Outer Banks video series. It was fun, but all good things eventually come to an end. In case you haven't seen the other parts of my trip, links to those videos are down below. Part 1 was about my drive to the Outer Banks and how amazed I was by the beach and the ocean and the nature here. In Part 2, I went to an absolutely incredible state park that was like a huge desert right by the beach. I took a beach safari trip in Part 3, and I got to see some of the famous wild mustangs that you can find along the beach in some of the Outer Banks towns. In Part 4, I found some more time to play mini golf and had some close looks at wild dolphins and even closer encounters with beach crabs. If you have any questions about my trip, ask me in the comments. While you're at it, like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. On Instagram, I'm Firsthand Globetrotting. On Twitter, I'm Firsthand Globe. Follow me on there. And don't forget, it's an incredible world out there, so pick up your passport and do some firsthand globetrotting of your own.